Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
call to order the meeting of the River Advisory Committee for November 29th of 2023. And let's start with the roll call so that our recording secretary will know who all's here. I'll start with
Trevor Matera.
Rod Borden.
Lionel Ingram.
Richard Huber.
Nico Papakostendis.
Dan Jones.
Carl Wickstrom.
And we have a quorum.
Did it.
Okay, the first order of business is to talk about the minutes, draft minutes of September 21st. And just to prove that I read them, I will mention that on page 2, typically it says there are 2 levels that the water has to reach. One is 3.33 feet, or with climate change, 5.76 feet. So there's the 100-year storm, and then there's the new concern about climate change. And in paragraph 4, second line, it says 3.3 feet and climate change 5.7, where everywhere else it says 3.33 feet or with climate change. So I would have the and changed to or with, so it's consistent all the way through. And with that, that's the only correction that I have for the document. Does anybody else have any corrections for the draft minutes? Seeing no one raise their hand, I guess we can accept a motion to accept the
I
draft
move,
minutes.
so to accept them.
I'll second
Lionel
it.
moves,
I'll second it.
and Rod is seconding. So let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody abstaining?
I abstain.
Abstain.
Okay, so Dan Jones and Nico are abstaining. Other than that, I think it's unanimous, right? Okay, so the minutes are approved. Now, the next item on the agenda is the report from Paul on the Pickpocket Dam. So I will turn the microphone over to Paul. He's hiding somewhere there. There we go.
Hello, Paul Velocich, the interim Public Works Director. And the purpose of this meeting today is now twofold. Originally, it was going to be an update for some of our funding partners from New Hampshire DES. And as part of the stormwater planning grant, we were supposed to have this partner coordination update meeting, and we thought it was best early on to have that with the river study, or at the River Advisory Committee. And we had planned for it in October, but the guy standing in front of you here didn't look at his vacation card very well, so that's why it is planned in November. But in the meantime, back at the end of September, we had the opportunity to apply for a grant. And the grant was for enhancing fish passage. And then you had a presentation to this board. And also, after that, went to the select board for a presentation. And it was to apply for the grant, which would fund 100% of dam removal. And with that, when the information was dispersed, with lack of really reaching out because it was such a short turnaround, you can see in front of you, there's a lot of people here to want to know what's going on. So with that, you're going to get some of the same presentation that you've seen already that led to approval for the NOAA grant, and also any updated information that we have since then. And with that, again, the main purpose was for the grant update. We got Deb Lizelle in the corner as the stormwater coordinator. Kevin Lucy of which he was at this meeting prior, was not able to attend. He was from the coastal program, of which we had the $40,000 from that. And also we have Bill Thomas. I think he just showed up. Yeah, Bill Thomas. He's not a funding partner, but he is touching all aspects of this project here. And his title is the Dam Removal and River Restoration Coordinator at the Dam Bureau. So with that, I'd like to start out with Melissa, the Assistant Town Manager, is up at the board right now. And I had watched on video Brentwood Select Board meeting, and it was the November 7th meeting, and we took some notes. And these are things that we acknowledge and we've heard, and I want to go through that list, and then if there are other things that through the presentation that you're going to hear, subject matter, that you'd like to know about, that's why we got a marker here so that we can write down additional items. That helps us keep track of the feasibility study. And it also, I just had the old swipe, so let me just continue here then. So first item I have up there was 91A request, and that's asking for some information of what kind of analysis. There's several items on there, but the town does have one, and I think they've fully answered it. But that is one item. The next item is the biggest thing up here is communication concern. And the communication concern is Brentwood Board wasn't notified, Conservation Commission wasn't notified, abutters to the impoundment, both on the Brentwood side and the Exeter side, that wasn't notified as the stakeholders that are going to be most affected. The next item, public notification short-circuited as part of the grant process. We'll talk about the grant process here a little later. Again, notice requirements. And as we go down, there was a feeling that the Exeter River Advisory Committee agenda says the same thing, therefore keeps some of the topics secretive. From there, the study that was presented to the Exeter Select Board leaned towards dam removal and required affirmative statement of dam removal. Feels that the Select Board was misinformed of other options. And you'll hear stuff about most of these items today. This is just some of the sound bites that I've gotten from that. Funding is available through the grant for fish passage, not involving dam removal. The option of if one house is at risk of flooding, why not purchase that one parcel? Other dam modifications are not drastically more expensive. In September, the Pickpocket Dam became a fish passage project, and there's no evidence that dam removal will aid in fish passage. The normal water levels will be significantly affected. Cultural effects have not been studied. Recreational use of the river will be affected. Exeter didn't do deed research to notify abutters. Again, that's the communication thing. Violation of due process for regional impact. No remediation funds for abutters to repair properties for the changes that will occur. Exeter have the authority to make this decision. And then lastly on the list is the status of the feasibility study. So with that, does anybody have any other main topic not touched already that we can write on the board for our reference as we go through the feasibility study? But also to help with when the consultant does the presentation, if there's a tie into that comment, he can point that out also.
There are a couple of questions here.
Excuse me,
Is the environmental impact study that would need to be done, is that listed on that list?
Can I interrupt you? Can I ask you to
Well,
hold the mic and give your name and...
What I would prefer is somebody tell me and then I'll repeat it here.
Well, we're trying to
Instead
get
of
name and
having a whole
address.
conversation going on. These are topics. You want to know about the environmental impact study.
Yeah, for the reservoir above the dam, 6 miles of water, thousands of acres.
Okay, any other issue?
Yes, I don't see anything referenced there about the 2 mitigating factors that the dam has already. There's a drain gate to that dam, and there's also the existing fish ladder that can be opened up in case there is a biblical flood coming.
Okay, so
does that
the
affect?
second part of that is there are other discharge ways for the dam, and how does that affect anything?
I don't see it addressed anywhere, so.
Good.
Matter of fact, go ahead. I was thinking, you know, if it comes to the point where you decide the dam is dangerous, why couldn't you just open up the drain valve and leave the dam there?
Understood. Next item.
Yeah, Eric Turner from Brentwood, Peabody Drive, and the only thing, some of the points are already ones that sort of I've raised initially, but I will say, if you could talk to whether in a full and open process where this has been done, in what I think was the original timeline, would it have been possible for Brentwood to have participated in the grant application with Exeter, since we will have most of the impact of the removal of the bank?
So the comment was, could Brentwood or should have Brentwood been part of this grant application?
Rebecca Dunham, Conservation, Brentwood. Question about, since conservation is a key process going on in Brentwood right now, about 12 parcels are along that section of Exeter River, and there was no discussion or conversation about those parcels.
And that's already listed right there, communication concern with the Conservation Commission.
Oh, more information than that.
Anybody else?
Yes, Robert Spann, Brentwood. I'd like to hear from you and your people as to the comments that we've already made, and then I may have comments after that, but specifically with respect to those points, do you find fault? Is there any inaccuracy on the list? Tell us.
We're going to park that right now, and what we're doing, so his comment for everybody else, since they don't have the mic right here, was, well, what's the answers to these things that I've already talked about here, so that that might spur on some additional questions. So,
Dan Jones, Exeter. I'd like to hear some discussion about whether there was ever any proper legal notice of the meetings of what took place on September 12th.
legal notice of September 12th meeting. What meeting was the September 12th?
12th? Whenever it was, they took the vote.
21st?
21st.
21st meeting.
The only thing in the notice was discussion of river matters. I'm questioning whether that was sufficient to cover.
Are we talking about the River Advisory?
That
or
River
the Select
Advisory
Board?
Committee, correct. Okay. You had something?
Yeah, I got a weird question for you. So you drop the dam, then all of a sudden I'm left with an extra, 15 feet down and however, 125 feet across. Am I going to pay extra taxes on that? Or when it erodes, when the water goes away, is the town going to pay to hold the banking up to keep my house on the 50-foot cliff that it sits on now?
So that was a comment already, and it was does the town have any extra funds in there for affected properties? That was already on the list. Any others?
I've lived on this river, I've lived in this town for 88 years. I've lived on the river 16 years. No. 60 years. What harm's that dam doing?
Okay, it's what harm is the dam? And that'll certainly be addressed of why we're even doing this thing.
May I piggyback off her? I'm Kathy Whiting, and I live in Exeter on the river too. I'm curious to know who would own that land that becomes exposed, that muddy silt filled.
Yeah, then that was I thought that was something about property lines. I remember hearing it, at least,
Yes.
yeah.
I think maybe I asked that
Okay.
question at the Brentwood meeting, but I'd be interested in knowing that.
Very good.
And paying more taxes on it.
Yes.
Okay, so, no more comments here. We have issues that may be talked about at the presentation. And with that, I'll introduce, thank you, Jesus, man. Jacob San Antonio. He's been with us for this whole project. He was with us for the latter half of the Great Dam project too. And he's going to walk through the presentation again. And again, this is so that we're sharing information with our funding partners. Thank you, Deb. And also to try to explain what had happened at the September meetings and the conclusions and why those conclusions were pertinent. And then where are we with the feasibility study stuff? So you'll walk us through all that. Yes. We do ask because we're going to have to get out of here by like 4:45 because of another select board meeting. That ask questions at the end of the presentation if you can, instead of during, so that we can do this a little bit more timely. With that, Jacob, and I apologize for getting your name there. It was the second time he did that.
Paul, there's a lady behind you in the tan jacket. Get her hand up.
Okay. Paul introduced me. I'm Jake San Antonio with VHB, and I'm going to give an update on feasibility study.
What's VHB?
VHB is a consulting firm. It stands for Vanessa Hagen Breslin.
Spell that?
I'll give you. I can give you my card after the meeting. All right.
I guess I stand over at the other
Do you
one.
want me to do it for you?
I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Not working today. Yeah, if you go to the next slide. Is that a park now? Oh, it's working now, whatever you do.
Oh, you got it?
It's working now. This is working now. Awesome. Thank you, Warren. Paul already alluded to it, but I'm going to start the presentation thanking for the project funding. There was funding from both the New Hampshire DES Clean Water State Revolving Fund that came through. It was originally going to be a low-interest loan, but came through as a grant through the ARPA funds, and then also through the New Hampshire DES Coastal Program with funding through NOAA. So I want to thank them for the funding. Thank you, Deb. Agenda, I'm going to go over a quick overview of the dam, some project background on why we're even doing the feasibility study, go over the feasibility study scope and status, go over some information on the NOAA grant, and then talk about next steps, and then we can open up to moderated discussion. So first, just to place everybody, we're in downtown Exeter. The Pickpocket Dam is a few miles upstream, right on the town line with Brentwood, right here, right where the red star is. Here is a plan view of the dam on the left. So as part of our study, we went out and did a full survey of the river and the abutting property. The detailed survey extended a few hundred feet upstream and downstream, and then we did a survey of the impoundment up to Hague Road. We did 12 transects of the river and a river profile to understand the bathymetry of the river.
I'm sorry, the what?
The bathymetry, the shape of the river under the water.
Thank you.
The dam is 15 feet from the downstream to the upstream end. The main spillway is the length of the dam, including the abutments, is 230 feet. The main spillway here is 130 feet across. There's also a fish ladder that runs along river left, so the left side of the river with the flow of the river. And then there's a lower training weir as part of the dam as well. Here's some more photos of the dam. This photo is very similar to the one we were just looking at. This one is looking from river right across the dam. The lower photo here is the low-level outlet. This outlet, during our, for the survey work, we worked with the town and DES to draw down the impoundment for safety reasons. As we were lowering that impoundment, it was found that the wood supports that operate the gate were fully rotted. So as we started to open that up, they did crack and break. So whether it goes to dam removal or to modification, this definitely needs fixed. Following the survey, the town was able to partially close it, but there is a leak now through the low-level gate.
Pardon me, impoundment, you said?
Impoundment. Impoundment is the reservoir or the water body that the dam creates. Some more photos of the dam. This one's from river left, looking down at Cross Road. This is the fish ladder in the forefront. This photo on the bottom left is downstream of Cross Road, looking up at the lower and upper dams. Here's the top right photo is a photo on river left, looking at the impoundment and the property across the way.
That's across the way.
And then this photo is just a photo of the impoundment. So just to provide a little background, and the reason why we're here today is this all started back in March of 2011. New Hampshire DES Dam Bureau issued a letter of deficiency on the dam and required the town to do some maintenance, prepare an operation and maintenance plan, and evaluate conduct a dam breach analysis to evaluate whether the dam was properly classed. So in 2016, the town hired VHB to perform a dam breach analysis. So at that time, we did a study of the dam, looked at the hydrology, how much flow is flowing in the river, and the standard for a dam breach analysis is to look at the 100-year event. So we looked at the flow for a dam breach analysis, you look at both a sunny day breach, meaning there's no rain and it's the normal flow in the river, and a 100-year event where the dam would breach or fail during the peak of that 100-year event.
Excuse me. Wasn't there another study that was done between 2011 and 2016 that claimed the dam was in low risk? to anything downstream?
The dam was prior to, and I,
Another analysis.
there wasn't another analysis. The dam was a low hazard dam prior to us conducting the dam breach analysis.
But it wasn't an analysis?
It wasn't an
Just-
analysis, it was the prior hazard class of the dam.
Who listed it that way?
The New Hampshire DES had it as a low hazard dam,
Okay.
but issued a letter of deficiency and was suspicious that it wasn't classed properly and asked for the dam breach analysis to evaluate.
Low hazard.
It was originally a low hazard dam. A low hazard dam is required to pass the 50-year event with 1 foot of freeboard without any manual operations. So no operations of that low-level gate, no operations of the fish ladder, assuming nobody came out to do that. So worst case, and it has to have passed the 50-year with 1 foot of freeboard. So back to the dam breach analysis. We were conducting that per the DES requirements for both the sunny day and the 100-year event. During that 100-year dam breach, it identified a couple of potential issues. One being one residential home where the flood elevation would rise above their first floor elevation. And that was the primary driver of why the dam was reclassified as a high hazard dam. It also had a few supporting issues as well, where there was a mobile home park or a manufactured home park where the floodwaters didn't reach the first floor elevation, but did impact their foundations. Given that it was already a high hazard because of that one residence, a full structural analysis on whether those manufactured homes would slide or fail during that event would need to be conducted if the town were to purchase that one property, still to be reclassified as a lower hazard. You'd need to do that analysis as well. And on top of that, there was another issue with during that dam breach, Kingston Road would be overtopped. At Route 111, Kingston Road would be overtopped, and that's a Class 2 roadway, which would require a significant hazard. So if the town were to buy that one impacted property on Kingston Road, either acquire the manufactured homes or do a structural analysis that they wouldn't move during that event, the dam would still be a significant hazard dam. And a significant, so just to help educate everybody, a significant hazard dam to meet dam safety requirements has to pass the 100-year event with 1 foot of freeboard with no manual operations. And for a high hazard event, it's 2.5 times the 100-year event with 1 foot of freeboard and no manual operations. So we submitted that study. We got comments back from New Hampshire DES and revised our dam breach analysis to address their comments. There were mostly minor comments on how to present the inundation maps following that dam breach. So ultimately, we revised that, and in March of 2018, the New Hampshire Dam Bureau issued a reclassification of the dam to high hazard and issued a final letter of deficiency in July of 2019.
Excuse me. Would it be correct to say that all that breach analysis that was done looked only at the river, the impact below the dam, not anything above the dam?
Yes.
Just one clarifying question as well.
I am getting nervous on schedule. I don't want to keep getting interrupted. I'd rather go through my presentation. I'm sorry. July 2019, there was a final letter of deficiency issued and required the town to develop a plan to address the deficiencies by June 2022 and to complete construction of whatever plan the town decides on by December of 2025. At that time, the town hired us to start to do some preliminary investigations. We presented some preliminary options looking at how high you'd have to raise the abutments or how high the tiebacks would be for some to meet dam safety requirements. We presented that to this committee in April of 2021. In the summer of 2021, the town requested an extension because they knew they weren't going to hit the original timelines in that 2019 letter of deficiency. At that time, the town was also applying for grants to help support the feasibility study that they knew they needed to complete, and submitted applications for the Clean Water Revolving Fund and for the Coastal Resilience Grant Program. Both of those grants, the town was successful and got awarded. And once they got awarded, the town authorized VHB to conduct the feasibility study in October of 2022. Last May, we provided an update on the feasibility study and invited the New Hampshire Dam Bureau because we knew there were questions on the reclassification and there were questions on high hazard, what could happen if we bought that property, or if the town bought that property. So we had Jim Weber come in. He presented to this committee on the reclassification options. And then in September of 23, we came in, given another update on the feasibility study, and also talk about the NOAA grant for fish passage due to barrier removal. And then in October, we presented a similar presentation to the Board of Selectmen. And that brings up to where we are today. And now we're giving another update on the feasibility study. So this slide provides the tasks and subtasks as part of the feasibility study scope. The first task is data collection. As I mentioned, we did a detailed survey of the impoundment, bathymetry in the immediate vicinity of the dam. We did impoundment probing to look if there was any natural, bedrock or barriers, how deep was the sediment that built up behind the dam. And we also, as part of that, did a dam inspection, which actually was finished yesterday, and I haven't got the final report on that yet. Task 2 was evaluating alternatives.
Talk about the colors there.
Yes, I can. The colors are, as part of the grants that we applied for the coastal program and through the stormwater planning, those, as they didn't fully fund the study, they paid for certain portions of the study, and the coloring, the green, is what the Coastal Resilience Grant funded, or partially funded, and the blue is what the stormwater planning grant partially funded.
As indicated in the bottom of the slide.
As indicated, yes. Jumping ahead.
Did we get a copy of this one?
I was just going to, Mr. Chair, if I may, could we look at the town manager? Part of this packet, could we post with the agenda for today's meeting online?
We will do that.
For folks that are not here and for those that are here? Great, thank you.
So task 2 of the scope is alternatives identification, developing, and I'll get into this in more detail as I progress, but it's putting together cost elevation, starting to put conceptual sketches of what the different options could look like. Also, task 3 is sediment sampling, so is looking at what is the sediment quality in the impoundment above the dam and below the dam, and I'll go into that more later in the presentation. An updated hydrologic and hydraulic analysis, so that's looking at the flows in the river, what they are to meet the design storm for the high hazard dam, so 2.5 times the 100-year flood. And then also looking at how those flows could change with climate change and using the latest data on that to see what those flows could be as, as regulations are constantly changing and incorporating climate change into them. Task 5 is cultural resources. Starting to look at what the archaeological and architectural impacts could be. Task 6 is impact analysis, so looking at rare species, wetland impacts, water supplies, water quality, and how those different aspects could be impacted by the various options identified in Task 2. And then Task 7 is developing a draft and final feasibility impact analysis report. And then Task 8 is project meetings and coordination. Here was the schedule that we put together at the beginning of this process. We've held pretty close to this schedule. A few of the items have slid, but we're still on target to complete this based on the overall schedule. As you can see, we had scheduled a meeting in October. We're now meeting in November due to a delay with a vacation. But we're on track to have a draft feasibility study in January and schedule another public meeting through the River Advisory Committee likely in February. So I've been talking about this a bit, but the status of the feasibility study, so the data collection and survey has all been completed. The alternatives identification and conceptual designs, those are still underway. We've progressed many of them. We wanted to do the last structural inspection before we looked at, pinning the dam in place. So that's the one more that we're probably going to add. The sediment sampling has been completed, and I'll talk more about that. The hydrology and hydraulic analysis is primary completed, but we may be tweaking some of the options slightly, so I'm just going to say it's still underway, as there may be changes as we finalize the study. The cultural resources work is also underway, and the impact analysis is underway, and I'm going to be giving some updates on that as I continue my presentation. And as I mentioned, the feasibility and impact analysis report is being started with a draft expected the end of January. So as part of the task was sediment sampling. So the initial step of that was developing a sediment sampling plan. Where we're going to be doing the samples, what analytes we were going to test for. And as part of that, we also looked at the environmental database on what releases could have happened in the watershed. This figure on the bottom, the black line outlines, the dam is right here. The black line outlines the watershed to the dam. And all those red dots represent environmental issues within the watershed. So above ground storage tanks, remediation sites. And we looked at those to get a potential idea of what could be found in the sediments and what we wanted to focus our sampling on. Looking through the database, there was nothing that really popped out as a significant issue. But we did test for what I call everything in the kitchen, under the kitchen sink. I mean, we tested, it's a broad suite of contaminants, and is what is typically required if you're going to be disposing of sediment at a landfill. We collected 5 samples. Sample 1, ways upstream from the dam. That's 5, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 2 in the immediate area upstream of the dam and 2 downstream of the dam. The good news was the sediment was really pretty clean. There were no concentrations of pesticides or PCBs detected in the sediment samples. PAHs were found in all the samples, and those are standard aromatic hydrocarbons that are found associated with cars and roadways. They're found in pretty much all sediment samples. And arsenic was also found in the samples, and they were the only samples that were above the New Hampshire DES remediation standards, but are believed to be consistent with background arsenic levels in the area. As part of that report and study, we also looked at the ecological risk and found that the ecological risk were pretty low for the metals and pHs and moderate for arsenic. But the sediment samples above the dam were lower concentrations than below the dam.
Stay away from the dam.
We also conducted, an updated hydrologic and hydraulic analysis, and this is to determine, as I mentioned, the flows to use for design and to evaluate for the different alternatives. So as the dam was reclassified as a high hazard dam, it needs to pass 2.5 times the 100-year flow event. So for this, we developed the original model was actually developed to support the Great Dam and is a large rainfall runoff model. The model is called HEC HMS, and it details all the land cover and slopes and time of concentrations within the watershed. And we use that to evaluate the discharge going over the dam. And that was determined to be, for the 100-year flow, to be just under 4,000 CFS, 3,980 CFS. And so the design storm to meet the dam safety requirements was 2.5 times that, or roughly 10,000 CFS. We also evaluated climate change, and the New Hampshire guidance for climate change is to increase the precipitation by 15%. So in doing that, as you start to approach, the 100-year rainfall events, which is roughly 8.5 inches in this area, adding 15% brings you to just under 10 inches. Once you've reached that high amount of rainfall, the ground isn't abstracting or absorbing more of the water. So as you get more rain, more of it runs off and finds its way to the river. So even though we're only increasing the precipitation for the climate change by 15%, it increased the 100-year storm by almost 50%. So once you multiply that by 2.5 times, it brings, if you account for climate change, it brings the potential design storm to just under 15,000 CFS.
What's the CFS? Cubic feet per second?
Cubic feet per second.
Okay.
So as part of the feasibility study, these are the different alternatives that we are evaluating. First one being dam stabilization, so stabilizing the abutments, either adding rock anchors or adding riprap to show that the area couldn't erode and could safely pass that. We're also what we primarily focused on is dam modification. So either partially removing or lowering the spillway, dam modification. The other options would be raising the abutments or creating a second tier of abutments further back. And that's really the primarily alternatives we've evaluated so far. I mean, we did evaluate partial removal and lowering the spillway, but found you have to pretty much remove the whole dam to change the hazard class back to low hazard. We talked already a bit about reclassification, but that was also alternative that we've been evaluating. And then the last is dam removal. So for those preliminary investigations, looking at dam modification, we looked at these options. So existing conditions, keeping the dam as is, as the base condition. And then we looked at alternative one, which it was increasing the abutment height to pass that design storm. So the design storm being 2.5 times the 100-year flood, or roughly 10,000 CFS. Over time, the dam has developed a sediment island. I mean, it's now fully grown in and has trees on it, but it does block a portion of the spillway and it affects the spillway's capacity. So we also looked at alternative 1A, is what we called it, was where we were just raising the abutments but also removing that sediment island. And then alternative 2 was adding a second abutment, so leaving the abutments in the main spillway as place, but creating a little further back a second tier of abutments and a secondary spillway to pass that storm. And so we evaluated under those conditions how high that would need to be. And then the third option was fully removal of the dam and the lower training weir. So here's a section view through the dam. So what we're looking at here is, here's the abutments on river right, the abutments on river left. The black area denotes where the fish ladder is. And this is where that sediment island is up in the corner. So what you can see on this slide, and this is the results of our hydraulic analysis using HEC-RAS, is that with the current 100-year event, the blue line here, we overtop the abutments. So even if the town were able to lower the hazard class to a significant hazard dam, they'd still need to do something to this dam because it would need to pass that 100-year storm with 1 foot of freeboard and no manual operations. The green line is the current day design storm, so that 2.5 times the 100-year flood, and as you can see, it's several feet above the abutments. And then the red line is the climate change, so evaluating that future 100-year event times 2.5. Yes.
Yeah, prior to your feasibility study, you did some analysis early on.
Correct.
This is where a lot of this data was generated.
Yep.
At the time, there was discussion that the crossroad itself and the bridge was a situation that would cause some additional concerns. But then I think you come up with that
we did.
Additional concern wasn't warranted.
We evaluated whether crossroad was actually impounding the water. So if that was actually acting as, during these large events, whether the hydraulic opening under that bridge was actually constricting the flow and backing the water up to cause this. We did evaluate that a few years ago. We took crossroads completely out and it didn't change the answers at the dam, which gave us comfort that the dam itself is constricting the water, not crossroad. And at that time, we didn't look at climate change. We were just looking at the current regulatory events. With the Coastal Resiliency Grant is when we did the climate change work.
What do you use the fish ladder for?
The fish ladder?
Yeah.
The fish ladder is for getting the fish over the dam currently.
The only fish that ever come up that ladder was lamprey eels. Don't tell me that, I lived there a long time, and I know you haven't.
I have not.
You don't know nothing what you're talking about.
Okay. So I'm not going to go through all the alternatives. We've gone through that at the September meeting. I have put up alternative 1A. So alternative 1A, to refresh your memory, is raising the abutments here, and here, and removing that sediment island. And
you can leave if you do any more.
Okay, that's,
and what we found is for the regulatory event, you'd need to raise the abutments 3.33 feet. With climate change, you'd need to raise the abutments 5.76 feet. This was with no change to the crest of the dam, no change to the low weir, no change to the fish ladder. To be able to raise the dam 5.76 feet, you'd need to be able to tie that elevation into high ground. That is what's shown, Paul calls these my lava lamp drawings, but that's shown here. So this is where the current abutment is. This is the other abutment. So to be able to tie into higher ground, you'd also have to build soil tiebacks to tie into high ground. So on river left, That can be all done on Exeter property, but needs quite a bit of fill. On River Right, that needs to extend and it would cross the neighbor's driveway to be able to hit that high ground elevation. To help you visualize that, I threw that lava lamp drawing on an aerial image. So main spillway crest, and this is where soil would need to be placed and the abutments raised to be able to hit the design elevation to safely pass that without changes to the spillway crest. Here's a summary table of all the different alternatives. So alternative 1, 1A, 2, 2A, and 3. It shows how the abutment elevations would need to be increased for those different alternatives. So, with the current regulatory event, the 10,000 CFS, you need to raise the abutments by a minimum of 2.85 feet up to 3.96 feet. With climate change, that would be 4.76 feet to 6.27 feet. And then changes to the 100-year flood, which is the FEMA regulatory flood and what drives flood insurance. Those different alternatives have impacts to that as well. So increasing the abutment height without removing the sediment island increases the regulatory flood. With removing the sediment island, it actually shows a small decrease. And then with dam removal, the 100-year flood at the dam location would be reduced by almost 8 feet. So this slide is a new slide. This slide is showing normal flow conditions. So the light blue, so again, to help people, the dam location is here. The light blue area is the normal impoundment to the dam. And the dark blue inner area is what the dam, or what the river could look like post-dam removal. The graphs across the side, again, Pickpocket Dam, Cross Road, all the way up to Hague Road. The light blue is the normal impoundment. With dam removal, the dark blue is how that impoundment is predicted to change with dam removal. So under the normal conditions, right in the vicinity of the dam, normal water levels would drop close to 10 feet. As you get about 1,500 feet upstream, it drops to 5.7 feet. And then as you start to approach Hague Road, it starts to approach back to normal, and by Hague Road, there's no change.
Can you point on the plan view where that 5.75 is?
5.75, so that's, it's probably right around here. It's actually right there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Was this slide available when the committee made its decision without informing Brentwood, noting the impact?
This is a new slide.
This is a new slide, so
Yep.
that was not part of the decision process, the impact on Brentwood.
Correct.
I've seen the river actually dry up in the summertime.
Okay.
That's a normal flow,
That's the normal
but
flow.
every 3 or 4 years there will be
No flow. Okay, that's good to know. This is the 100-year event. So this is the FEMA regulatory event. Cross Road, the light blue again is as the dam is today. The dark blue is with dam removal. So with dam removal, there'd be a 5-foot reduction in the 100-year flood right upstream of the dam, tapering to no change by Hague Road. This slide is showing the National Wetland Inventory. So now that we have finished our hydraulic analysis, looking at the changes in water level, we're now starting to evaluate how this wetland inventory may change. And We're still under process in doing that, so I don't have any further information, but I wanted to show what the current wetland mapping looks like. As part of the feasibility study, we're also looking at how groundwater can change, how that will change water supplies and impact wells. Here's an initial figure that we've put together based on public records on where wells are located. And now that we've completed the hydraulic analysis and how the water levels may change, we're now starting to look at how groundwater and potential impacts to wells. Now going to transition into talking about the fisheries grant. So back in September, this is a slide from then. We came in front of you to talk about this grant opportunity that was out there for restoring fish passage through barrier removal. We talked about the eligibility, that where the local government eligible to apply, that the grant objective is for fish passage for sea-run fish, or fish that live part of their life in the ocean and part of their life in fresh water. The primary design species for this project would be like the alewife or blueback herring, which are sea-run fish. So good eligibility for the grant. Other components of the grant where there was no federal matching requirement, and the grant could 100% fund the design, construction, and post-monitoring for dam removal. And applicants, if wants to apply, funding would, the earliest it could be available is July 1st of next year. So back in September and October, this committee and the Board of Selectmen voted to move forward with submitting a grant for dam removal. The grant application went in just before October 16th. The primary drivers for the grant were advanced restoration efforts for the diadromous fish, the sea-run fish, improving the Exeter River's declining water quality as it is listed and as impaired by New Hampshire DES and EPA. And removing the dam would increase Exeter River's flood resilience and reduce vulnerability with the dam out, and improve public safety to the residents downstream that were in the inundation area if it ever to fail. This is a preliminary design for dam removal that we put together for the grant application. Yeah, go for it.
Sorry to interrupt Jake's presentation, but some of the comments about communication really hinge around the grant application. I wanted to briefly talk about my role in that and why there wasn't a lot of communication going on. So I had a phone call from Eric Hutchins, and this board recalls Eric because he was part of the river study group that was involved with the Great Dam Project. He was the NOAA representative on that, and he's semi-retired now. And he was saying, how far are you in this feasibility study for Pickpocket Dam? Because there's a grant coming out for fish passage, and it's quite attractive. The amount of money that's going to be available is more so than other years. And I told him, hey, we're in a feasibility study. We don't even expect to have a draft report until January. He says, well, watch out for it. I give you the heads up, here it comes. So sometime in the summertime, I don't remember end of July, the NOAA grant comes out, and I notified Jake and said, hey, this is out there. Is this anything that we can take advantage of? So he sat in on some of the webinars, and after looking at it, he said, hey, there might be some possibilities here. And with that, it was early September, if I recall this right. He came in to talk to me and then some of the town folk and said, you know, this might be attractive here. Here's what we know about the Great Dam. And you see some real nice enhanced slides here of what he knew, not necessarily at that time, but what was going on. And with that, it's like, well, what's the money situation? And he comes back and he talks to us again. And with that, it's like, this, you know, they're 100%, and it's looking like a preferred alternative just may be dam removal. And so it's like, how do we get this information out? And so that's where the September meeting with the River Advisory Committee came out. And it was only like a week and a half later. It was a short turnaround, and it was about this grant. From there, this board liked that idea with that opportunity for funding, and sent it on to the select board, and you already know the results of that. But I had to say why some of that communication was short-circuited. It was a timeline that they had to be moved quickly, and myself kind of leading the charge or trying to gather information whether we should apply for this or not was constrained at a very short turnaround for that. And so I interrupted the presentation for that, but I thought that was important information to know.
Let me mention that in the September meeting, we had 3 people missing at the time. So it was unanimous among the quorum that we had that we should go ahead and apply for the grant.
That's correct.
But some people weren't here to have an opinion that day.
Very good. Sorry to...
Wait, we have a question over here.
I would just like to comment on what was just said, just for the record.
Could you step to the microphone, sir?
Sure.
And while you do that, as a matter of procedure, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to allow residents who do not reside in Exeter to be able to comment.
Yes, but they need to identify themselves and
I
the
second it.
town that they come from.
There's a motion and a second. We need to vote.
I'm sorry, second. Okay, do we, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, it's unanimous. We will let people speak.
Thank you for the right to speak.
We need your name and your town you're from.
Yep, so Eric Turer from Peabody Drive in Brentwood. The reason I wanted to speak is I just wanted to clarify what went on in terms of the communication around this meeting regarding Brentwood. I have been in touch with Paul since last spring, I believe, about this study going on, and folks in Brentwood have been working through me. Folks in Exeter have been talking through me. I was told this might be presented, the preliminary findings, in September. So on September 6th, I sent a message to Paul asking, is there going to be a presentation at the September meeting? And I was told on September 6th, there is no meeting in September. On September 12th, I got a follow-up email, and it said, the committee will be meeting to review a short turnaround grant. No other information. So that didn't sound relevant to what we were interested in hearing. Then I didn't hear anything after that until I got a message from Paul on September 27th, after the meeting had taken place. And the message basically said there was discussion of the dam at that meeting on September 21st, significantly focused around dam removal. And I asked for clarification, and I tried to get Paul to send a link to the video, which I was unable to access. So while this was going on, we were not aware that a presentation had been done. We were not aware that a We were not aware that a decision had been made either around grant application or around dam removal. And by the time we found that out, it had already gone through the select board process at Exeter. So I just want to clarify the communications process was not sort of passive. I was actively seeking information in September and did not receive it. So thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Dunham, Block Drive in Brentwood, Chair of the Conservation Commission. I'm very interested in this topic, and I'm following up on what Dan Jones said about the legal notice of something like this. I went back through conservation records to determine if in the calendar that you put up there from 2021 through 2023, was there any communication with Brentwood, either the select board or conservation, that the dam removal was a possibility, to keep us in the loop, to be aware. I could not find any communication. That tells me, although you have the dam, it's your property, there was no consideration in advance of the September 21 meeting that Brent would be affected. And I think that's a very important fact, that if we're neighbors and we share a border, we should have been part of that process from day one. When you applied for the grants, when you went back in 2021 and got the DES grant, et cetera, to study the river. I think that's a very important fact. So that's it.
Okay, going forward, we'll have public comment after your presentation is concluded.
Sounds good.
I'm sorry, how much longer will your presentation be, do you think? How much time will we have for public?
We only have 40 more minutes because we have to vacate.
I can go through I don't have much more left, so maybe 5-10 more minutes. Here's the project design for dam removal. It includes keeping some of the pieces of it, removing the fish ladder, removing the lower training weir, removing the majority of the spillway, likely for cultural resource, as that process is still undergoing, and there's still a lot of permitting as this project moves forward, in consultation with New Hampshire DHR, but right now we're thinking about keeping, the retaining wall along this side, making 2 flow channels, and some pretty simple grading, removing the sediment buildup within the river and creating a channel with around a 1% slope, which is easily passable by the primary fish species being the herring.
I've never seen a herring. Not in the water around the dam.
Aren't eel like
Are you sure they're coming?
Yes, they
eel
are.
like
I can comment if you want. I can come to the microphone later. I live on the Exeter River. I can answer that.
Here's the typical section through the dam, moving back. That's the red vertical line here. So this would be a typical section. It's being designed for a bank full width around 70 feet. So that would be from bank to bank during up to around a 1.5 year flow, would be around 70 feet. On this lower is a profile through the dam. So the dotted lines is the existing ground, including the existing fish weir and the existing dam spillway. And the black line is the proposed grading with dam removal. So essentially connecting those 2 lines. For the grant, we did get 10 letters of support for our application. Letters of support varied from the New Hampshire DES Dam Removal and River Restoration Program, the Town of Exeter Conservation Commission, the Coastal Program, this committee, from New Hampshire Fish and Game, from the Nature Conservancy, the Select Board, the Piscataqua Region Estuaries Partnership. So we got a lot of support for the application process. Here's the timeline that we put in the grant application, assuming the feasibility study process was completed and that the town was awarded a grant. starting Q3 of 2024. We'll start with additional data collection, moving into final engineering design, permitting, and cultural resource coordination. We anticipate that taking about a year and a half, stepping into the bid phase at the end of 2025, with awarding at the beginning of 2026, construction starting in the summer of 26 after the herring run is completed. And then we also included adaptive management in the grant, so making adjustments a year after so we can monitor during the first fish passage season post-removal and have the contractor remobilize and make changes if necessary. And then we also included FEMA letter of map revision and post-construction monitoring. The standard conditions with these type of projects is 3 to 5 years of post-monitoring. And the requirement is to do a FEMA letter of map revision within 6 months of project completion. So the next steps is really finalizing the alternatives following the dam inspection yesterday, complete our cultural resources work, the impact analysis, and we're on schedule to submit a draft feasibility study report at the end of January 24. Have a public meeting again. That's one thing that we wanted to talk about was when the River Advisory Committee is in February. So we could schedule a meeting to talk about the draft report at that time. And then our schedule is to issue a final report in April of 2024. The grant, we don't have a hard timeline on when we'd hear about the NOAA grant. Based on the webinar, they thought that we'd start to hear end of February, March, where NOAA may have some questions, but the earliest funding would be available would be July of 2024.
A quick question. The reason why there's no involvement of the towns, meaning Exeter alone, and no warrant article, is because this grant would include all costs. Is that correct?
The dam would include all costs.
Yeah. But if there were going to be costs incurred by Exeter alone, perhaps, there'd have to be a warrant article.
I can't speak to that, but maybe somebody from the town can.
Yeah.
Rustine.
Hi, Rustine, Town Manager. Yeah, to answer that question, if there needed to be money raised and appropriated by Exeter to support modifying the dam or doing something different, with the dam, we would have to go to town meeting and get money for that.
And if that passes, that is the town's decision, correct?
It would be in that instance, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. But to speak to that, there's still, even if that's the town's decision, there's still a lot of design and permitting that would need to be done. And that's when the notifications to the different conservation commissions would be made, the coordination, in getting the permits with the Army Corps, New Hampshire DES, and that whole process.
Right.
We're a ways away from that process. What I can speak to is the impact analysis. I went through a lot of this already in the presentation, but I just put that task up here again just to speak about what we're going to evaluate for the alternatives to modify the dam, stabilize the dam, and remove it. So those are still all incorporated into the feasibility study. What I can say is, with rare species, we're still looking into that, but with the dam modification options, there'd really be no changes to what are there currently, as those would really change what the options that we're evaluating would keep the normal impoundment and would keep the normal hydrology of the wetlands in the areas upstream. For fish passage, the fish ladder doesn't function very well. They do get low counts through there. The counts are much higher at the former Great Dam, so that the dam is a barrier to fish passage. So with the dam modifications, the current proposals have no changes to the fish ladder, so fish passage would still not be great with the dam modification options. With dam removal, fish passage would be improved as there would no longer be a barrier and it would just be the natural river and would provide more breeding ground for the herring. Wetland impact analysis is underway. We just finished our hydraulics looking at what the dam would, what the river would look like post dam removal. So we're working through that. Recreational usage, we're also looking through. We did do a float of the river and documented what we saw for recreation, and so we're working on that section. Invasive species, we'll be also addressing, and how to handle that with the different, with dam modification and dam removal, looking at river ice, and if that's a potential risk with dam removal or dam modification. I mentioned the wells and water supplies, so looking at how the groundwater may change and how that may impact wells, but also looking at how it could impact even the town of Exeter's intakes downstream of the dam. I talked about that at our previous meeting on how, there were questions about, with the reservoir in place, could you meter water out to provide water for the town's intakes? And, the impoundment, though it's long, is pretty narrow. And what we found is that it would draw down fairly quickly and wouldn't provide a long-term supply of water to the town. We're also evaluating water quality and how that may change. We're evaluating infrastructure, so how it may impact bridges or crossings upstream and downstream. And then we're also preparing visual simulations, so graphic representations of what the dam modifications will look like and what the dam removal option would look like.
Did you do anything on wildlife impact?
I'm sorry, we need his name and his comment if we're going to be doing comments.
I'm moving on to discussion, so we can open it up to, that was the end of my presentation, so I'll turn it over to you to help moderate a discussion then.
Okay, whoever wants to come to the microphone needs to identify themselves with their town and their name.
Mike Edison, 6 Stony Water Road in Exeter. I live on the river, a bend in the river, actually. So I have a bunch of concerns. One of them is, once the hydrology study is completed, I guess it will include the water flow above the dam. I'd like to know how that flow is going to impact the bank that my house sits on. It could be, and this young lady here too, it could be that within 50 years our house could be gone. So that would be high impact for me if you remove the dam. That could be. One of the things that I mentioned earlier was about the gates in the dam, and I heard you say that all your study is you're not allowed to consider the operation of the gates.
Correct.
I don't understand that. The operation of the gate could mitigate all of this. And that gate could be automated. It doesn't have to be, it could be fixed and automated, and doesn't have to be manually operated. And I understand that's the state telling you can't include that in the report, right?
That is correct.
So it's not their problem, or not their reasoning, it's the state reasoning that. And it makes no sense to me at all. Plus, there's an additional climate change amount of water. The rainfall is not going to be based on historical rainfalls. It's going to be multiplied by 1.2%. And that's going to make the water that's behind the dam even hold more water. That's a state limitation on your report too, I imagine.
I didn't follow that question.
The climate change amount.
Yes.
That's incorporated in your study. That's not your decision. That's the state told you to use that?
That was part of, to evaluate resiliency and climate change. It was part of one of the grant applications.
I'm just wondering where that climate change number comes from, because it's not historical.
It's not historic, it's New Hampshire guidance on how to incorporate climate change into analysis.
So the state demands that, right? That doesn't make sense to me either. So I have other issues too, but I'm going to leave it at that. I don't understand why the gates that are in that dam can't be used to mitigate the probability that this dam would fail. And this is a high-risk dam now, only if it fails. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. We want to hold the comments to about 2 minutes or less because we only have another few minutes to go.
Jake, can you talk about the lower discharge gate capacities of that? If I remember right, there's not much capacity in that lower discharge.
There is not much capacity. I don't have the flow number at the top of my head, Paul, but I will say our first analysis that we submitted to the state included opening that gate, still found the dam should be classified as high hazard, but one of the comments we had to address in our 2017 resubmittal was closing that gate. But even with leaving it open, with the volume of flow, the 4,000 cubic feet per second for that 100-year flow, that overwhelms that gate pretty quickly.
Depends on when you open the gate, though. If you open it up a week beforehand, it can make a big difference.
Let me point out that on our agenda, we had other business. Is there any other business? I think we're going on to public comment, and we'd like you to, whoever's going to comment, to identify yourself with your town as well as your name, and try to hold your comment to 2 minutes or so.
I'm Catherine Edison. I live at 12 Connie Road, just above the river. And without transparency or knowledge of steps to modify and repair the existing dam and the costs therein, I ask that this September 21st, 2023 vote to remove the dam be rescinded or put on hold until all abutters are properly contacted, informed, and all residents of Exeter and Brentwood can discuss this matter, all the facts and the feasibility study, and then again have a public meeting to vote on whether to modify or remove the dam. Thank you.
I believe that we did not decide to remove the dam. We decided to apply for a grant to make it possible. I believe that is, it's not true that this committee.
Actually, to be more specific, this committee voted to recommend that we apply for the grant. We don't have the power to actually approve application for a grant. All we can do is recommend to the select board that we apply to the grant, and that is what we did. We did not make a vote to remove the dam.
So
we did not make a vote. We have not. All we did was recommend that they apply for that we apply for this grant. We recommended to the select board that we apply for this grant. The decision has not been made even by the select board to remove this dam.
Well, please put that in writing when you're contacting everyone and giving them all the documentation from today. That would be great. Thank you.
Dan?
If I can respond to that, unfortunately, I was not at the meeting. I did spend some time reading the minutes. The minutes made it quite clear that the application included a statement that we were ready to go. Shovel ready.
Never heard that.
I didn't find
there was a discussion among the board about that fact. Not that we needed further studies or further approvals.
Who said that?
Never heard it.
I believe the application said that. And this board approved that application. I also question...
You mean the River Advisory Committee?
Yeah. I also raised the fact that I don't think there was sufficient notice that this was going to be considered at that meeting.
Don't know.
Well, thank you for your comment.
Heard it.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Robert Spann. I live in Brentwood. And just on that last point, I believe, you can check the minutes, but I believe in your minutes from September 21, you voted to recommend that the town apply for the grant and that the grant application include dam removal as the alternative,
That's the preferred, yes.
preferred alternative. I have a couple of questions that I'd like Mr. San Antonio or Mr. Vlasic to answer. First of all, what study, if any, had you done before September 21 on upstream impacts of dam removal? Secondly, isn't it true that dam removal is not a requirement of this NOAA grant application? It may be preferred and you get extra points for saying you're going to remove the dam, but you could have gotten a grant application in without dam removal. Is that true or not?
That is not true.
Well, I've heard from NOAA directly that it is true, so we'll test that. And could you have included in the grant application any money for remediation of upstream impacts? And if so, did you? What study of, you mentioned that you're beginning to study impact on wetlands and cultural impacts and fish passage impacts. What study of any of those had been done prior to September 21? Oh, I'm sorry, one other point. In reference to Mr. Vlasic's point about how this was a rush and there wasn't time to contact anybody in Brentwood, I noticed from the presentation that you had time to get letters of support from NHDES, the Town of Exeter, NHDES Watershed, NHDES Coastal Program, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, Piscataqua Region Estuaries Partnership, and the Nature Conservancy. So you had time to do all that, but you didn't have time to tell anybody in Brentwood.
Okay, the last one sticks in my mind because the last one I heard, turnaround. So I was looking for decisions from this board and then from the select board whether to apply for a grant. Those were given at the end of September and beginning of October with the select board. From there, it was turned over to consultant to put a presentation together. So that's what happened there. The agencies were contacted with the representatives of my department to see if they would offer support letters. Some of the other questions was upstream analysis of dam removal, any previous studies. No, this was the study. This is what you saw. You can see the first time that this board and even myself had seen it, that you can go to the town website and watch the meeting. And you can also watch a similar presentation at the select board, which was shortly thereafter.
You have the dates of those, so we can go back and look?
No, it's September 21st, I think you said?
September 21st is one, and then the select board met next
It was
week.
the first meeting in October,
Yeah, I think it was the second.
October 2nd, I believe.
Remediation of upstream impacts. There may be some in there in the analysis, in the cost analysis for the NOAA grant. There was some contingencies put in there, and we know with the dam removal project that we had here on the Great Dam, that there was issues that cropped up of where additional funds were required or not anticipated at the beginning, so there was some contingencies put in there, exactly enumerated on what those specifics are. You won't find that. And then there was a comment on, you could have got this grant funding from NOAA by improving the fish ladder. And Jake, why don't you give a little, what you found out about that?
Sure. When the grant came out, I participated in a webinar put on by NOAA. The grant is for fish passage improvement through barrier removal. I mean, that's the name of the grant. During the webinar, people asked if you could apply for fish passage enhancements, and they said that you could apply for fish passage enhancements, but it wouldn't be worth your time as you wouldn't score very well. So they were encouraging, and the funds really are available to remove barriers, and that was their primary funding, is what they wanted to fund.
Primary, meaning it's not impossible?
I'm not NOAA.
There's more questions here.
Russ Swayze, Hague Road, Brentwood, and I own approximately a half mile to 3/4 of a mile of river frontage, so I'm going to be semi-greatly affected by this and so forth. And I did see on that it showed from the Hague Road Bridge down quite a ways, it was very minimally affected. So my first question I asked earlier, did you do a wildlife impact? Because you did one with the fish and so forth, but with the wildlife, beavers, otters, muskrats, and that, have you done that type of feasibility study? How they're going to be affected by?
That will be included in our feasibility.
Okay. And then another question I got, right now with the dam, especially in the springtime, and climate change, we've been getting heavy rains in February and so forth, and the water really fluctuates. It goes up as much as 5 feet.
Yeah.
So my 50 acres goes down to 25 acres. The rest of it's underwater. So if this dam is removed, is that major fluctuation going to be changing? I'm not a hydrologist, so I don't know.
There's still going to be fluctuation. I mean, I'll tell you.
Is it going to be that extreme though? Because that.
I don't know where in the river. I mean, picturing by Hague Road, I don't think it'll change much. So you're still going to get
that major
those major
so it's going to change,
fluctuations.
flood the wetlands and so forth.
It still will up that far. There will be, as you get closer to the Pickpocket Dam with it being removed, there will be, there'll still be fluctuation, but it's going to be, as the water levels are going to be depressed, as much as 10 feet. That
right,
fluctuation.
There's a lot more room for it to rise there, but where it hasn't changing much where I am, but it goes up 5 feet and when the ice starts to melt and so forth. And
that's not going to change.
That's not going to change. Okay, thank you.
Robert Spann, Brentwood. Just real quick, I didn't understand Paul's answer to my question of what impacts, upstream impacts, were analyzed and studied before September 21. Could I get an answer to that question?
What was evaluated before that September meeting was changes to the dam and how it would change water levels. So it was not, the full impact analysis wasn't done, but it was primarily on how water levels would be impacted upstream.
What about people who have flooding properties?
Excuse me, can you identify yourself at the microphone, please?
My name's Jay Garnett. I live at 2 Stony Water Road here in Exeter, and I'm on a 50-foot cliff. If that water isn't holding up the hill, what is? I've got trees, but what happens? Does the town pay to have that fixed so that my house doesn't slide into the river? Anyone?
As part of the hydraulic analysis and part of that sediment analysis, we do look at how the river, with the different modifications, including dam removal, how the velocities in the river will change. And we also took, as part of the sediment sampling, we didn't just look at contaminants, we looked at grain size. So as part of our analysis, we are looking at and have looked at what grain size would be mobile with the changes. What we've seen is that the velocities in the river, for the most part, they change slightly, so that there's not going to be a huge mobile amount of material sediment that will move. There will be some movement, and we found that it would start to potentially drop out where the velocities get low enough by the railroad crossing downstream of the dam and by Kingston Road. But where that.
What does that mean for my foundation? That's what I want to know. My foundation.
What we're finding is the velocities in the river aren't going to change drastically. We're not expecting major erosion or undermining of the current riverbank. And part of, if the town decides with dam removal, and as we get through the permitting, there'll be, part of the design will be stabilization of the areas underwater. With the Great Dam Project, as soon as the impoundment was drawn down, the town went out and seeded all the banks to stabilize them and to prevent invasive species from coming in. And we'd assume something similar with the design for this project.
The fellow with the blue shirt's been trying to get to the microphone. Can we have him
Just
talk?
let me to add to this, Mr. Blue Shirt. So the analysis that Jake just talked about with the sediment movement and grain size and stuff, all of these reports are on the town website. This particular one was one that was funded by the coastal program. Kevin Lucy's is not here, part of the grant, funded that partially, and that is on the town website, as is every presentation that was given on pickpocket is there also. So I just wanted to mention that.
My name is Mo Shore. I live at 1 Runaway Road in Exeter, about 500 feet from the Pickpocket Dam. My basic question is, why is the pickpocket deemed a high hazard on the basis of an analysis that one residential property might get its first floor carpet wet during a once in a 100-year storm? I'm not saying a dam can't be hazardous, but let's get some perspective. I lived in Los Angeles for a while. In 1928, the St. Francis Dam sent a 70-foot wall of water, mud, trees, and boulders crashing down the Santa Clara River Valley, clearing a 2-mile swath of land 70 miles long. Killed more than 450 people, destroyed 900 houses, 24,000 acres of farmland. That was a high hazard dam. The point is, a once in 100 years wet carpet in one house is not, by common sense and logic, a high hazard. So the question is, how do we push back on this classification? Unless it's not really about a hazardous dam, but rather about the fish. On October 16th of this year, we've heard about this grant that was made. 69 pages asking for almost $2 million. 69 pages. Buried on page 6 is one sentence. The dam's only current use is for recreation, although public access is very limited. The dam's only current use is for recreation. One sentence in 69 pages. I'm one of those who use the dam, the river above the dam, for recreation. And if anything, I think we should apply for a grant to increase public access to the recreation opportunities the dam provides. If this is about the fish, I'd like to point out that fish don't vote and they don't pay taxes. I just got my tax bill. I don't know about you. 22% higher than in June. And I presume you want me to pay it on time, even if there's not a quorum at my house. So to me, this is not about a high classification issue, high hazard classification. I think that's being used as an excuse, and it's about this grant and about the fish versus the people who use the dam for recreation, the people who walk by, look and enjoy the sight of the dam, the people who photograph and paint the dam, and the people who live on the river and whose property is enhanced by the dam. Not one word in the feasibility study about those issues or those people. So speaking as one of those people, if pushing back against the high hazard classification helps save the dam, I'm 100% in favor of that. In fact, I'm 100% in favor of any means necessary to save the dam.
Excuse me, what? Yeah, we have 5 minutes left, 4.5 minutes left.
Rebecca Dunham again, Block Drive in Brentwood. I forgot who mentioned here, maybe one of the gentlemen who did the study or Paul over there, that we were told by NOAA that you would get extra points if it was for dam removal.
Extra points?
Extra points by NOAA for making that decision. When you read the grant narrative, Brentwood is mentioned a number of times that the water level will be affected from the dam up to Hague Road, that the level will drop up to 10 feet. I hope the NOAA grant readers are more talented than possibly general population, because in there it implies, or it infers, or I infer from that Brentwood has been part of this discussion all along, and we have not been. And if that would have been a possibility to have a cooperative effort, I think the grant might have more of a possibility for passing if it were taken into consideration the stakeholders. Stakeholders have been mentioned a number of times this afternoon, and we were not included, nor were Exeter residents. And I think that is a great fault in the way the grant was written. So I hope NOAA is better at reading this grant and the omission of that in their grant application.
Yeah, hi. Once again, Eric Turr, Peabody Drive. I did want to clarify, my reasons for speaking twice today, not just that I'm a Brentwood resident. I am an abutter on the river. I am one of Brentwood's representatives to the ESRELAC, the Exeter Squamscott River Local Advisory Committee. I've been on that for a decade. I'm our town state representative. I lead the town paddle that we do each fall down the Exeter River to the dam and back, and we've been trying to join forces with Exeter to complete that paddle on both the Exeter and Swampscott rivers. I say that only by way of background. I'm not speaking on behalf of ESRELAC. I'm not speaking on behalf of my role other than myself as a citizen. I just wanted to say, stepping back from all the details, I hope the folks at the table recognize that this was at minimum a deeply flawed public notice process, almost by prima facie evidence of the people that showed up once it was known what was going on. Mr. San Antonio twice during the September 21st presentation mentioned that there's nobody here. That was a statement during the presentation a couple of times. So regardless of whether we met the letter of the law on notice, it clearly didn't meet the spirit of the law on notice. And again, there had been a long time effort to be informed, and I had told people from the day high hazard status was deemed that there's going to be a process. There's going to be a process. Don't worry. Yes, dam removal is on the table. Yes, dam removal is a likely outcome for this process. But there will be a process. There will be studies. There will be analysis. There will be discussion. It will be a deliberative process like what happened at Exeter, at Great Dam, I'm sorry. And I sort of felt like people were relying on that while acknowledging that this might happen.
You know, the info that was posted on the website was posted on September 21st, if I remember correctly. So, you know, there was nothing in advance of this that would have let anyone know that any monumental decisions. This dam was, first dam erected at Pickpocket Falls was in 1652. There's been a dam on that site for a very long time, and the decision to take it out was made with incomplete evidence in basically a closed room with a video camera. We got to watch it in retrospect. I'm just asking if you all can consider slowing down, stepping back, realizing the only reason that this was imperative that this grant application goes in this October was because there's a lot of money available at the moment. This grant, as I understand it, is available every year. Correct me if I'm wrong. It is a running grant. But there are higher levels of funding. And so basically, in order to make sure that the grant application went in during a rich cycle, we moved past the process that would have engaged the town of Brentwood, the butters in Exeter, a completed study where we could look at all the facts and discuss them, and a real deliberative process. And I just really, I'm on the ESRELAC committee because I love the river. It's for the good of the river. If dam removal's for the good of the river, so be it. As I said, if Exeter had made the decision through a deliberative process, I wouldn't be surprised that Brentwood would have asked to be part of your grant application, because we will have all the remediation to do upstream, and there's no resources. So thanks.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for your comments. I'm hoping that as a result, we're able to improve our process so it gets better. Right now, I need to ask Paul, we're going to do a meeting in December 21st.
Yeah, I have Geosyntec to be coming in and talk to you about advanced septic systems on the
Septic systems on the sewer. Okay, so I can put that in the agenda. Everybody will know what's happening. Okay,
yeah.
I need a motion to adjourn because it's time to turn the room over. Lionel's giving me the motion. Anybody else to second?
I'll second.
Nico seconded. Okay, we need a vote. All ready to adjourn?
Aye.
Anybody abstaining? Anybody voting no? I think we got a unanimous vote to adjourn the meeting until December 21st.
Okay, thank you.
What time?
3 o'clock in this room.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.